Of you, last week, for those of you that were here or connected to the service, we invited you to not only have some affirmations for yourselves, but to think about somebody in your life that might be needing to be reminded that they are whole, that they are holy, that they are sacred, that they are worthy. And we felt good doing that, didn't we? Well, I'm going to invite you now to not only envision them feeling that way, but to invite them to come so that they can hear it for themselves and they can remember it for themselves. And so we have a great opportunity that's coming up. We have Holy Week, right? And I know it's already all on your calendars to join us for Palm Sunday. We have an amazing Holy Thursday, Monday, Thursday experience. We're going to have our annual communion service, so we take communion on that day. We also are going to have a sound healing bath. And it's going to be a very contemplative, meditative experience. Then we have Easter. That will be on April 9th. And for those of you who haven't made Easter brunch plans, we're going to have an awesome food truck that does brunch. Be a part of it. So you can invite your friends and family to come and join you for brunch here after Sunday services. So there should be a slide behind me that gives you the dates, those important dates, right? You're going to hear me say something you didn't think I was going to say, maybe, which is bring out your cell phones, take them out. I'm watching. Take them out. Take a picture of that slide. All right? We still need a few more people to take a picture of that slide. There you go, to make it a little easier for you. And I'm going to give you a time right now to send that picture to a couple of friends and family. So text it to them right now and let them know that you'd love to spend Holy Week with them at Unity on the Bay. Raise your hand once you've sent that text out. Let me see who are those people. Beautiful. Over here, we got a few people that sent it. Back there, a few people over there. Okay. Some people are still trying to text it all out. Some of us have bigger thumbs than others, All right. This is spiritual community, right? Like being able to connect with each other and to bring more people to be a part of this energy. So thank you for sharing that with your friends and family. I can't wait to spend Holy Week with you. You can also let them know now, if you hadn't texted them already, that they also get really funny jokes out of it that they can use in their own lives, at work, at school, wherever. Here's one. I know it actually didn't go as well in the first service as I thought it would have. But why did the Red Cross not allow Jesus, Mohammed, or Buddha to volunteer? Because it's a non-profit organization. I thought it was so funny that I actually wrote on my notes to say, it's not just funny, it's ironic. It is ironic and funny because these three individuals were really, for me, part of showing humanity what it's like to share our light with each other, to share our truth with each other, and how to be in service to that light and to that God of our very being in their own different ways. They were inspiring us to be of sacred service in the world. Buddha, for example, said, "A generous heart, kind speech, and a life of service and compassion are the things which renew humanity." How many of you believe that humanity needs some renewal in this moment? That we are birthing a new renewal? And so who are we in connection to that? How can we be of service to that? The Prophet Muhammad said, "A man's true wealth is the good that he does in the world." How are we allowing ourselves to consciously do good deeds in the world? And then our master teacher Jesus in Luke chapter 6, verse 38 says, Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure pressed down, shaken together, running over will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure that you get back. That's so unity, right? We talk about it here. If you want to experience more love, step into being more of the love you were meant to be. If you want to experience more peace, allow that peace that is God to be that which moves you forward in the world. If you want to experience a greater sense of abundance and prosperity, simply breathe it in and be that. Be it. Be it so that you can experience it. And so we really get invited to not only recognize the power of sacred service or being of service to the world, but the power that we have to create a shift, to create an uplifting of those that are around us and humanity, our friends and family. Everyone can feel, I believe, when we energetically move into intentional sacred service. And so it's really about being in the flow of giving and receiving. It is, for me, recognizing that the flow actually wants to happen, right? Like the flow is wanting and it's pushing through us. And we're the ones that sometimes create the limitations or the barriers for that flow to take place. But the more that we discover what those limitations are and the more that we are willing to step through them, the more open we are then to not only give, but to receive as a result of that which is the blessing of us being a blessing. Love that song. And one of the quotes that we tend to use a lot from Malachi, which talks about, if we give our tithe to God, watch the windows of heaven open up. Eric Butterworth, a Unity minister, has a great interpretation of it, which is it's not only that God, the windows of heaven will open up for us and all of a sudden we'll receive, it's that we'll recognize that we are the windows of heaven. And the moment that we step into service, we open up all of who we are, and all of a sudden heaven is a place that we get to live in. And heaven is a place that we invite other people to live in with us. Many of you know that I've been here a while. I've been a part of this community. I stepped into it for the first time over 20 years ago as a congregant, and it really was through being of service that I recognized what I was meant to do. I had an inkling, but I also had some fears around it. I didn't have as much clarity, and I don't know if it was, the consciousness of this place, which we all know is so powerful. I don't know if it's the amazing individuals that were around me and supported me and I volunteered with, some of who are still some of my closest friends from 20 years ago. I don't know if it was just I was ready, right? I was finally ready to really receive, but it really created a shift in me. I had volunteered many times before, but it was here where all of a sudden I recognized that it was more than just volunteering. It was a sacred act. And I was living into my own divinity. And the moment that I did that, the path of service became the way in which I started to live a life of purpose. And so I invite you, wherever you are in relation to that, right? Like if you feel you are living your purpose, beautiful. If you believe you know what your purpose is, but you haven't still fully sort of welcomed it in and stepped into it, and there may be some trepidation, then service is for you. And if you are completely unclear about what your purpose is in life or in this existence or in this space, service can really open you up, can really open all of us up to recognizing that which is within us, the way in which we were uniquely created to be the expressions of good in the world. We're always getting opportunities to be of service. Have you noticed? Whether it's at the supermarket, whether it's on I-95, whether it's at work or at home, we're always being invited to be of service to others. And some of you are saying, yeah, of course, which is what I say when I step back. But the times that I'm in those experiences, sometimes I forget, right? Sometimes I forget in the supermarket when somebody's going really slow in front of me that I'm there to be of service, that I'm there to share my light. And so how can we be reminded of that more and more? For me, it's really about being very intentional about it. And it's a practice. Being of service in the world is a practice. And like all practices, it requires some work. And it requires us to be intentional about it and to really allow ourselves to not only want to do it, but create pathways for us to do it in the world. Charles Fillmore, our Unity co-founder, said this: "The value of all service lies in the spirit in which you serve and not in the importance or magnitude of the service. Even the lowliest task or deed is made holy, joyous, and prosperous when it is filled with love." One of the things that I love Ram Dass. He's a great spiritual guru who blessed this world. It's not in this, well, is in this world through his teachings. And one of the things that he would talk about is that love without service can actually feel very superficial. And service without love can feel very conditional. What am I going to get back? But the ability that we have to bring those two things together, love and service, to have the act of service be anchored in the love that we have for God, and the love that we have for who we are, and the love that we have for our fellow human being, the other expression of the Christ and the other expression of God in the world. And so we can really create a sacred path out of it to recognize more of who we are. And in Hinduism, it is seen as a path. It's the path of Siva. And I love that the way that it's understood is that it's the highest form of unconditional devotion to the divine. Get a sense of what that would feel like. The unconditional devotion to the divine. Could you imagine what life would be like if in all those opportunities of being of service, we recognize, no, this is not only the way that I express my love, this is how I feel the devotion that is really my natural way of being for the divinity that I am and the divinity that I get to see and experience in all those around me. When we go into this path, or when I moved into this path, I realized that it is an opportunity to recognize more fully what Jesus says to us. It's like, where two or more are gathered in the name of God, there God is. I've shared with you before, for me, that's because God is in our relationships, right? That's how we experience God a lot of the times, in our relationships, how we are being with others and how others are being with us. And so what a wonderful opportunity to be able to experience God in that way. And so many times in this spiritual path, for me, and maybe for some of you, it can become very me-centered. Right? Because it's a very individual, it's a very personal journey, and it's a very personal experience of recognizing our own divinity. And so it can be very I and me-centered, and there's power in that. And there's also power in recognizing that we can move into the we. Because in our oneness, we are all one. In our oneness, we are all connected to the divine, and we are all expressions of the divine. Ram Dass says this: "I help people as a way to work on myself, and I work on myself to help people. To me, that's what the emerging game is all about." And so we don't have to choose between the me and the we, because they're one and the same when we recognize it as one of this holy, sacred path of recognizing our oneness and honoring that oneness, honoring that way of being. Now, Dionald Walsh, who usually goes a little further than most people, says this: "Your life has nothing to do with you. It has to do with everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. Once you can live from the foundation of knowing your life is about the lives you touch, you'll finally be able to step into the life that you've longed to live, awaken to the divine expression of who you truly are." Now, that may seem at odds, that it's not about us, it's about all those that we touch. But the reality is that how many of you believe that God is a generous God? How many believe that God is a giving God? How many of you believe that God is a God of service? How many of you have heard you'll know someone by walking a mile in their shoes? If we want to know God more fully, what would it feel like? What kind of insights would we get if we actually sort of put the cloak of God on and started walking in God's shoes by being generous, by being giving, by being of service? And all of a sudden, not only would we learn or know God more fully, but then we recognize that as we are walking that path, it feels so natural to us because it is who we are also. And that is the power of being in service. And we are made for it. We were created for it. In Mark 10:45, it says, "For Christ came not to be served, but to serve." That Christ that is within each of us didn't come to be served. It didn't come to be lifted up. It came to be that which lifts others up. It came to be the light that lifts others into the light. It came to serve. And so the more that we are willing to do just that, the more that we are living in our authentic, natural way of being. Now, you all know me. I can get very practical. So, yes, it's about how we are of service out in the supermarket or on the expressway or as we were walking in. And we can get really, we can become very aware and intentional in that way. And, again, it's a practice. It's work. And so I do forget when I'm in the supermarket. I do forget when I'm at my son's school or when I'm at home, actually, with my son, right? And so the ways in which we intentionally create reminders of how we can be of service, the more practical it is that we can live into that. And so I'm going to get very practical. Be of service here at Unity on the Bay. Volunteer at Unity on the Bay. Be a part of this energy so that you can not only receive from it as you give, but then it becomes such a practice that you no longer have to just rely on this community to support you in recognizing divinity in others that we meet, but it's just something that comes naturally to you. I should probably do. I am living proof of the transformative power of volunteering in this community. Again, the path of service is what led me to a life of purpose. And the path of service is what continues to get me deeper into that purpose, to know that purpose more fully and to embody it in a way that it just becomes the way that I show up. I'm working towards it, of course, right? But it's the practice, and it's the practice of it. One of the beautiful things about service, and Ram Dass talks about this, is that there's almost like a hidden curriculum to it. The moment that you decide to be of service, to be of sacred service. It says service is an endless series of questions, puzzling and insistent. It only raises questions, and not only raises questions, it helps to answer them. Service is a curriculum. How can that be? Well, for me, we really encounter some of our own limitations. How many of you have said, I just don't have enough time? Let me tell you, if you said that to yourself, I can assure you that giving time to others in being of service will remind you, you have all the time that you need for the things that you prioritize. How many of you have asked yourselves, what could I bring to this situation? Thinking that what you have may not matter or may not be as important as what somebody else has. The moment that you step into service and you recognize just how powerful you are to the people that you are of service to, the more that you'll remember that truth. And the more that nothing, not even yourself and these self-limiting judgments that we have placed on ourselves can keep us from recognizing how powerful and strong and beautifully created we are. You also brush up into some stuff, right? Like in service. So I'm looking around some of the familiar faces of sacred service, and we can all attest that it's not always easy because we're serving each other. We're serving people, right? And so how many of you have walked into a Sunday service not feeling so hot? And so, one of our ushers gives you a smile and you just want to walk right on by, right? It just sometimes happens. I'm honest. It sometimes happens. And that usher gets an opportunity to remember that regardless of the circumstances, we're all children of God. regardless of how I felt in that moment. I'm thinking of Jessica, who's been helping in our bookstore, for example. Not all customers are the same. And to be able to recognize that beyond our personalities, we can be of service from the Christ nature that we are to the Christ nature of other individuals. God, what a beautiful lesson. What a beautiful teaching. And so that's part of the curriculum. Part of the curriculum is to know that we are one. And so service, to me, brings the mind and the to-do with the beingness. And we recognize that they can be one, and that we can be one with those that we serve in our oneness with God. And one of the most beautiful things, I think, about being of service, and yes, this is a plug for being a volunteer here at Unity on the Bay, is that we are creating and supporting a safe and brave space so that, maybe it doesn't feel so hot sometimes. But you know what? We're going to be here to support you in recognizing your truth. In moments that you forget, we're going to have reminders. You've heard me say, like, I became a minister and because I needed to trick myself into the practices that I know will lead me to a prosperous, abundant life. And so being of service in this community does just that. It gives you the practices and gives you a safe space by which you can remember these truths and remember who you are. Brother Lawrence, some of you may know the story. He was a monk and wrote some beautiful things about just the power of simply being of service. And it wasn't anything grand. It was in the little things, from washing dishes to sweeping with a mop. But the beauty of it for him was what the intention or the energy or the consciousness by which he was doing it and what it allowed him to start seeing and believing. And this is what he said about his own experience of service, that he began to live as if there were no one save God and me in the world. How many of us are wanting to experience that there is only God and us in this world, and then moving into there is only God in this world? Sacred service is an opportunity for us to really live into that. But we have to be willing, we have to be intentional, and we have to create, for me, the practices that will remind us of how to be and what to share in the world. The Christ did not come to be served. The Christ, our light, came to serve others. How are we living it? How are we allowing ourselves to be that? How are we letting go of this false sense that we have to hide our light under a bushel or play it small, or that our light isn't meant for others to be lifted up by? Whatever the service is, whatever ways in which we live out sacred service, I can guarantee you, the you that is eternal, will be lifted up. And it will be much more connected and aware of the them that is eternal. And isn't that what, for me, life is about? Where two or more are gathered, there God is. And I really, really want to be aware of that. So it's not only good for our community, but it is. So we really want you to look at how you can be of service here at Unity on the Bay, but it's also what is good for humanity, and it is also what is good for each of us. The path of service leads us into a life of purpose. Together, we do have this opportunity before us as we are growing and expanding here at Unity on the Bay, as we individually are growing and deepening and expanding, of being much more conscious and intentional about how we can serve and serve with others that are of like mind and like heart, and allow that to be what brings out that shift, that we are also that renewal, as the Buddha says. So however you are called to being of service, and if you didn't get it, I am calling you to be of service. Don't make me repeat myself. But however you're being called to serve, whether here or in other places, whether at the supermarket or at I-95, it is a calling. It is the moment. It is the experience that is that you are being invited into. And it is something that will bring us into a greater understanding of the reality that we live in. I love this poem by Hafiz. It talks about being of service by being who we are naturally. And still, after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. Unity on the Bay, are you ready to light up the whole sky? Are you ready to no. Are you ready to light up the whole sky? Are you ready to shine your light? Are you ready to live in such deep light that it is all that we are living into and the experience that we are having and the experience that we are giving to other people? This is the time, as the song is about to say, this is the season, and we are the blessing. If not now, when? If not us, then who? Thank you so much for visiting our YouTube channel. We post new videos every week to keep you positive, present, and inspired to your divinity. Please click on the subscribe button below and also that notification bell. Remember to share this with your friends and your family, those that you know will be inspired just like you have been. And always remember that we love you, that we bless you, that we behold the Christ in you, and we see you doing great things. Thanks and take care.